think Prithvi, you can take it away.
Greetings and a very warm welcome to everyone on our 12th Community Sync-up call for Litmus. My name is Prithvi Raj and I am the Litmus Community Manager who welcomes you all to this Community Sync-up call, where we'll be discussing a lot more on chaos engineering and of course the Litmus 1.5 release. So starting off with the agenda, I have posted the agenda on the chat as well and I'll share the agenda with you all. So hey guys, this is the agenda for today. We'll be discussing, first of all, obviously we'll be discussing a quick recap of 1.5, that is our latest release, and mentioning a few points of our latest release as I'll share the release notes. We have a revamped Chaos chart hub. We also have added a new repo, that is the LitmusChaos Litmus demo, which provides a fully packaged demo environment. Now we have introduced ability to trigger individual as well as multiple E2E tests, or we can complete, we have also introduced a complete E2E test suite for Litmus PRs via GitHub Commons. There are a lot of improvements which are major bug fixes, like fixing the missing or clustered event generation. Operator behavior and fixing the cluster levels. The whole release notes were shared in the community as well, like the Slack, and I'll be sharing the link on the chat as well. Now coming back to the agenda for today. Our agenda includes a speech on LitmusChaos user cases and requirements by Andreas, our beloved member, community member. Next up, we'll have improvements to the chart hub, Chaos hub by Argo Jyoti and Soumya, who can divide their time. Thirdly, we'll have a speech on AWS platform Chaos in Litmus by Rahul. And lastly, we'll be talking about our blog program and virtual meetups, which is the latest we have started off on dev community, where we have started off writing blogs on features as well as introduction to Litmus. And you can follow hashtag LitmusChaos on dev.to, where all our blogs are posted. And I'll be talking more about it in the end. So starting off with the agenda first, but before that, a huge shout out to our members who are joining this community meetup, and especially Akram, who is a new joinee, as well as all our contributors who have made Litmus the product it is today and who have helped Litmus develop as it develops. And I would give the floor to Andreas to speak about LitmusChaos user cases and requirements. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Andreas Krivas. Maybe a quick introduction from my side. This is, I think it's the first time I'm joining the community call. I'm a lead engineer in a company called Container Solutions. We're a cloud native consultancy based in Europe, but also presence in the North America. Since a few months back, I'm working with a big client, one of the biggest retailers in the world. And about a couple of months ago, we were integrated with their SRE team there to help with chaos engineering. And this was basically my starting point in the chaos engineering area. And since most of us didn't know a lot about chaos back then, we started investigating a few tools, open source tools. And one of them was also Litmus, which is of course more than a tool, a complete framework. So we investigated Chaos Toolkit, Pumbaa as well, Chaos Mesh, Chaos Blade, a bunch of tools. And we were very, very happy with Litmus and the approach that Litmus takes. Client was as well very happy, so we thought, okay, let's start with Litmus. And I think that was the starting point where I started discussing with the community and mainly with Karthik, who has helped us a lot the last couple of months. A few more background about the client, so that you guys can understand also the type of environment that we are operating on, which is a very, very complicated, a complex system. This client that we're working on, they have multi-tenant clusters. I'm talking about multiple of different brands even that they reside in the same clusters, but they also need to have complete isolation from one another. So that makes it quite complicated setup with a lot of microservices running there, a lot of tools that have been developed over the course of the years, and now no one is really maintaining, you know how it is. So they ended up with a very complex and hard to maintain system. And they thought, okay, we need to do something about it. We need to increase the resiliency of the system. And this is why they start thinking about chaos engineering. Also, they don't have experience in that area. So it was also new for them. There were some key requirements which played a big role why we went with Litmus and why we're still going with Litmus. And it will be the tool that we will go forward. One and foremost is scalability. They project to move all their workloads in these clusters in the next year or so. So we're talking about hundreds of microservices. So they need a tool that can handle the scalability of that system. Performance is very key. They need the experiments to be started very quickly. They need the experiments to stop very quickly in case there are problems. For them, it's important that they have more control on how the tool executes these experiments. A third one is extensibility, which was one of the key ones. One thing that they didn't want to do because they've taken that road in the past and they were not very happy with that is, starting a tool and then having to work with this tool forever. What Litmus, the extensibility of Litmus and the ability to use libraries that you can develop yourself was very attractive to the client. Something that we couldn't find also in other tools. So that was very, very important. And the last requirement, which was because of a lot of questions that I had initially, is they're operating in OpenShift 4 already, which means CRI-O. And CRI-O is something that is a pain at the moment, because not a lot of tools and platforms have already started supporting CRI-O. And that was a big question also in their head, how we can work around that. So having all these requirements, we thought, okay, Litmus checks almost all the boxes. And since then we started engaging with you guys, with the community, trying to see also how we can elevate the support for OpenShift, which already has happened, and it is very, very good. And how we can bring also Litmus, how we can help bring Litmus to the next level. And in the last month, a lot of interesting things have happened. A lot of interesting use cases popped up, and I think that might be useful for the community and for others that might face similar cases. Like I mentioned, they have a very complicated environment, which means that there are a lot of microservices that they communicate with a lot of other dependencies. For example, one microservice could communicate with 10 other microservices in order for a request to go through. So it is a very, very important task for them to be able to test the network setup of the platform. They want to be able to introduce latency to an interface, but also they would like to have the ability to do more granular experiments. To, for example, if we have 3 applications, A, B, and C, that they talk to each other, they would like the ability to introduce latency between A and B without affecting C. Things like that. I understand why this is important. They had incidents in the past in high traffic periods where a seemingly unconnected microservice could cause the whole platform to go down in case it got stuck, and it was really hard for them to figure out what really is going on there. So network resiliency is super, super important for them, and in CRI-O environment. So that was the first and still biggest target that we are facing. A second one is CPU stress experiment. They noticed as well that a lot of applications were starting dropping threads after a certain amount of traffic was going in. So they are very, very eager to start trying the CPU hog experiment in their environment, which was the first we started. And I'll talk a bit about that after that. And finally, the third one is deleting a pod. And this is an interesting use case because you would think that in an OpenShift or a Kubernetes environment, when you delete a pod, ideally, well, the expected behavior is that it should be up and running very quickly after that. Well, that's not the case in the environment that we are working in. If you kill a pod, the application takes 3 minutes to be up and running again. So in these 3 minutes, imagine if you kill 10 pods of 10 applications, 3 minutes could be very, very impactful for all of them to be up and running again. So even a simple experiment like pod deleting is super useful for them. And the roadmap for now is, since we already have CPU and pod delete experiment, we're going to start executing those with Litmus in production environment next month. So I think that will be also very interesting for us as a community to see the performance and all the scalability and all the things that I've been mentioning about. And now we're also starting to progress with the network experiment under these constraints that I mentioned. So it's a very interesting environment. We are getting every day better idea of the requirements that we need to comply with Litmus. So far the client is also very happy. Also on another note is that as a company, as Container Solutions, we also have some internal clusters where we test things, or we run maybe some demo applications or things like that. And I was talking also today with colleagues, and probably we're going to deploy Litmus also as well internally for our clusters as well, which is good news. We have also an SRE team which they took a look at the tool and they would like to try it out as well. So I think you guys are definitely on the right track. There are definitely, of course, things we can always improve. And one of them was the CPU experiment, which I personally worked on the last weeks. And from my experience there, I think there are a couple of points that I've discussed also with Karthik. Maybe I can mention also here that I think are good to have in the mind for future releases. One of them has to do with how much we can enhance the pod spec while we create an experiment. Either CPU or network, doesn't really matter. But the ability, for example, to add resource limits and requests proved to be quite important for us because in OpenShift, they have default limits and requests. And for example, one reason why we shifted to Litmus Go runner, apart from being faster, is that the Ansible runner was not able to run without increasing the limit ranges in the namespaces that they had, which made it a bit harder to work in the cluster. So I think having the ability to, for example, increase or modify and specify the resource limits and requests is a very interesting feature. The second one would be security context that we found is very, very important for the network experiment, but also maybe the stress experiment eventually, to be able to add capabilities to the pod. Another thing that I thought is, okay, I know that through Litmus we can stop the experiment. We can patch the engine state to stop, and it will stop the experiment. But what if we are in the middle of a CPU stress experiment? What if the chaos target container is actually under stress now? Patching it will remove the experiment, but the process inside the target will still run. That's why one of the things that I implemented in the CPU hold experiment is the ability to pick up the respective POSIX signal and stop the experiment before exiting. I think I also added as a suggestion that it would be a nice way if we can have in pod spec the lifecycle hooks, like a pre-stop hook where we actually can do it more neatly. I think these are of course good improvements that we can do. It's not a blocker for anything. We can still use the experiments. But I think during our experiments the last month and our experience, this would be interesting features to have. On another side, we're quite happy with Litmus. I think, Litmus is on the right track. It's about making it, more whole. And the last note, and then you guys can ask any questions you would like. I'm very, very fan of Litmus Go runner. It's very fast, very easy to work with. I used also the bootstrap process or the contributors process to create the CPU hole experiment, and it went very smoothly. So I think that is a good thing. So yeah, I would definitely suggest that we put the emphasis on the Linux Go runner. It seems is a faster and better approach for the runner. Yeah, that's in a nutshell what I've been busy with. And yeah, anyone has any questions? Happy to answer.
Yes, I do have a couple.
Yeah.
Andreas, not sure you must have observed me here and there. I'm Uma, co-founder of MyData, one of the co-creators of the project. I don't code much, but I'm really passionate about taking this to the next level, where it becomes the default chaos engineering tool for the cloud native community. So thank you for adopting and giving all the feedback. Christopher is another user we have learned a lot from, just like you. And this community has been really helpful in getting the right next things to do. And we continue to invest more. For example, Prithvi is the new community manager, and we have Shayangi, who is the new doc writer dedicated for Litmus. So you will see more and more things coming up. But my question, really, that's my introductions. So my first question is, this community is growing. Maria is taking a SIG kind of leadership on the Helm chart, on the observability front. Christopher is helping. You are really helping on the core experiments. So any feedback on what can we do more to turn this into a more community-centric project? Do you advise a little bit more of this is a community update, but do you suggest one more meeting in the middle of the month where we purely talk about, hey, let's do brainstorming or coding about a particular thing? It's more of a team talking about real development topics, right? So is that a need that you see will be helpful? We're happy to do that. That's the first question. Maybe I would listen to all of you in this call as an answer to that. And then I'll ask the second one.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is a good idea. I think the bigger the community gets, the more also questions or maybe ideas we're going to have about technical stuff, technical topics that maybe we need indeed a dedicated brainstorming or a session that we can discuss those in depth. I think that would be a good idea. In terms also to engage also the wider community, because as a company, we are very, very much into CNCF and we have a lot of contacts there and a lot of people. One thing that always works is creating more talks in meetups, especially these days. I can see a lot of chaos events happening. Usually Gremlin is the one dominating everything. But it would be nice to see the community, the open source community, having more presence also in this kind of events. And we can help with arranging, or we can definitely help with events and maybe invite one of you guys or more of you if you want to talk about Litmus in an event. As a community between us, I think indeed, because the discussions in Slack are very interesting, and a lot of times I'm also thinking, hey, I'd like to discuss this in more details, for example. So that would be an interesting thing we can do. We can start with a meeting, just a technical one, to discuss maybe the issues that are coming or current work for the release. That would be interesting.
Thank you. And anybody else want to add on? I mean, it's a time that you will be spending. I want to make sure that apart from we investing as part maintainers, Sumit is from Intuit is another maintainer. Sumit, would you be also able to spend an hour in a month to try?
Yep. So there are two major things which is on the roll, and we first go and implement something for our product, and then we usually go and contribute. That's what till date we are doing. So for AWS, the major breakthrough is coming. So we'll be adding a support for AWS resources, and we will be adding more experiments on Kubernetes side. We have a one community project or open source project called Kiko, and we probably be adding the chaos experiments on that. So that's some update, and we are actively working. We are again restructuring the things, and we are making everything a little bit more seamless. But Uma and Karthik, I have one very important question to ask. Do we maintain a requirement doc or use case doc anywhere where we could, given that we are supporting so many frameworks and that it is so extensible, we could call it out and create a mapping that, yeah, if someone is looking for CPU, these are the probable option available in the Litmus. You can go for ABC. If you're looking for pod delete, these are the option available. How you can delete that with that. I have some thought, because this is the way how we are doing. We have more than 70 or 80 use cases. And when Andreas was talking about that, then I was able to correlate that most of the things what he was talking, that's already there in our use case or our database, that we need to work on that. So I think as making this community mature, it would be really important that we pick the use cases and the requirement, and then we see that what solution we have. And then we could, as you were suggesting, that we can open up that, okay, these are the two major requirement and these are the use cases. Can we do a coding and get that thing added, whichever your preferred technology stack or programming language?
Definitely, Sumit, that's a great idea. Use cases, a keeper of use cases in open, so that the knowledge is whatever we think is there out open, and people, it's kind of almost like a product management in open, right? A community driven product management. It's a great idea. I would love to seek more support from you, and we'll definitely put some thoughts and open it up as a process, how to get more collaboration among the requirements. What's the next thing to do, right? And yeah, it's a welcome step, Sumit, and thank you for spending one more hour. Looks like we are going to have that developer-centric meeting 15 days from now, right? So once in a month, we'll have this updates from everyone about their using and positives, negatives. How can we do better as a community? The other meeting purely for people who use and technical brainstorming and developers. Maybe there's a different set of community there. Anybody else want to pitch in that, hey, I do like that meeting kind of thing? Christopher?
Yeah, probably just one comment there is we sort of introduced the concept of special interest groups in the last meeting. So there is a special interest group charter, SIG charter, that will probably shortly publish. That's going to be focused on certain areas. For example, the experiments is one thing, right? The core chaos is one part of it, monitoring is one part of it, deployment, etc. So we could have these SIG meetings, that's part of the SIG agenda. That would be, like Uma is referring to, it could be a 1 hour meeting, probably once in a month, apart from the regular community sync-up meetings, where we could spend more time brainstorming on deliverables related to a particular SIG. And that can involve technical discussions around how we will go about achieving certain things. And those will be taken up for release. So we'll have representation for all aspects of the project within a certain release. And there's also a consensus around how to go about it and to what extent we will achieve a certain target within a certain release. Yes, definitely open product management, probably done in a SIG oriented way, something that we're looking at. So I'll just take this opportunity to sort of request the community to come forward and actively participate and subscribe yourself into a particular SIG. That way, you know that you're going to have some focused time, and you're probably going to have greater chance of basically getting your own requirements into the Litmus release. Yeah, so that's one thing I wanted to share.
Thanks. Just to summarize that, Karthik, you're saying you will plan to introduce a product management SIG within the SIG charters, is it? And then somebody can Okay.
The product management SIG is definitely one of the things. I think pretty similar on the lines of, let's say, SIG releases that's there in the Kubernetes community, but also the SIGs for individual areas within Litmus.
Okay.
I think we are speaking about, for example, I think thanks to Andreas, good to hear your voice, Andreas. You've been speaking for a long time.
Yeah.
So a lot of Andreas inputs are coming in towards the core experiments side, likewise with Christopher on the monitoring, Sumit on the workflows and chaos toolkit integrations. So we'll probably definitely have one overarching SIG, which is probably trying to do a general product management, trying to provide feeders into the other SIGs, and the other SIGs are more focused on that particular area. And I think those are probably the ones where we might have low-level technical discussions. Mostly the ones that are being carried out on Slack, we will try to carry it out on that meeting.
Awesome, thank you. And I mean, Sumit's contribution, just to recollect, right? He's the one who has brought out the idea of Argo workflow introduction to coordinate multiple experiments. It's not just about experiment, but there is a layer that is needed above it. And then Christopher was talking about the importance of monitoring, performance, scalability, all that. So it's improving. So it all boils down to use cases. So that's perfectly good. My second question to Andreas was that I think you were already answering on the chat. So because of the experience that we learned from Sumit, an important feature got into the roadmap about workflow introduction. So the Chaos Hub right now has Litmus experiments. So we're planning to introduce, this community is planning to introduce Chaos workflows, which are nothing but a sequence of experiments, right? There may be a need for some users to take a defined sequence of experiments as a Argo workflow and then just run them. And then the monitoring is another aspect of it. How do you do that and how do you schedule it? And in fact, scheduler was a requirement from Christopher. So all this is now coming down to another need of Litmus portal, right? So chaos engineering is about visibility as well. And we want SREs to coordinate among themselves, and then they want to integrate with GitOps. And so it all is boiling down to another layer of management, and not just the CRDs and a good API framework, but also a good portal that puts everything together, a set of Kubernetes clusters together. So we have the beginnings of that as well. Maybe we will, we are already starting to put some of the thoughts of design as well as the code in open. There's a new folder called Litmus Portal. Some of you might have observed. And a pre-alpha version is what we are trying to introduce the next month. That will try to have some Argo-based scheduling as a framework, and then monitoring events, what's going on to see. So, so that was my question to you, Andreas. Do you see that as this SRE tool suite that you talked about? Maybe that's something that can be put into Litmus portal. I'm not sure, but this is a use case discussion. I want more. I think your inputs will be very, very helpful there.
Yeah, I think it definitely, I agree with that layer being important. Because if we're talking about the use cases, there's, especially in a multi-tenancy environment like the one we are having, there is usually a request that, for example, we want to run on this, want to run chaos tests on this domain, and this domain can have 10 namespaces with 50 deployments there. So these are the layer of orchestration is definitely important. Argo is something that also we are looking at with a client, but also internally for the work that we are doing internally in the company. And I think that would definitely be helpful, Argo workflows. On the client side, it's a bit harder because they are stuck with quite old CI/CD systems that they're in the process of changing, but it will take some time. And the reason why we're actually have no choice other than to build this tool now is because they don't have the time to change their systems until next Black Friday, which is a big target for retail companies. So for now, they want to test everything before that day. That's why we have to build this tool, because we cannot have Argo at the moment. We cannot have proper workflows. But that's not, that's temporary. I definitely agree that this is a great way to go forward with Argo and Argo workflows and having this added layer of management. This is also what we noticed that is kind of missing when we want to orchestrate experiments in multiple experiments at the same time, or a sequence of experiments. It required this extra layer. So definitely recognize that. I think it's a good way to go forward. That test suite, tool suite we are building is very customized to the client. We can see how it evolves, and if that's something we can generalize, but it's very tailor-made to their.
No worries. I was just, maybe a workflow is what that is, and inputs and being part of that, whatever Karthik is saying, a SIG charter for use cases, Sumit, Christopher. I mean, people who are really using Litmus is more important. We use Litmus in production too for our other OpenEBS platforms, as well as for our SaaS platform. Litmus is first-hand chaos tool, right? So we do have a service internally trying to put more of requirements, but this is a real requirements coming in, and which are more valuable. Thank you. That's my second question. So please keep going ahead with the next set of agenda.
Yeah, so probably we'll just try to get in some of the other Litmus community members, popular members. Maria is there. We have Akram Riyahi joining in, Sibin John, Konda Reddy, a lot of new folks who we've been interacting with over Slack. Would you like to introduce yourselves and probably just share your thoughts about Litmus in general?
Sure, Karthik. Yeah, my name is Konda Reddy. I work for FI Networks as a site reliability engineer. I'm excited to do some POC on chaos Litmus. It really helps us to understand the SLA and calculate the SLA of our services. Yes, I just started the doing some POCs, but it's really great. Karthik was helping me to set up and everything. If I have any query, if I ping to Karthik, he's helping me. Thank you so much, Karthik.
Yeah, welcome, already. Thank you. I think there's a lot of folks in the community. The Slack is always active. I think a lot of expertise is there on the community, as you can see from this conversation. So I'm sure you'll get a lot of help. Yeah, thank you for using Litmus.
Hello, my name is Akram Riyahi. I'm a cloud builder from WeScale. I'm a fan also of chaos engineering, and I have written some blogs in chaos engineering, and I have used many tools in order to compare the difference between these tools. And then I've seen Litmus, so I've begun using Litmus in Kubernetes, and I've used some experiments, but I would like also to enhance these experiments, such as aiming the systems, as we can say, the system components of Kubernetes, such as API server, etcd, or the kube scheduler, to the experiments.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I think thanks, Akram. I think Sumit here is also developing a suite that is doing precisely that. I think we're in you're in the right place. I think those experiments should start getting added into the chart hub in the subsequent releases.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Maria, would you like to introduce yourself? Maria is our SIG lead for the deployments, and she's taking care of the Helm charts for experiments as well as the Litmus infra, as also other DevOps and CD aspects within the Litmus project. Okay, I think she would like to skip the intro this time. Anyone else? Sibin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Sibin from Cochin. My working as an operations engineer in Mindcurve Technologies. So I heard about Litmus from you, Karthik, during the OSCONF Bangalore conference.
Okay.
Where you present. Yeah, that's the first time actually I heard about Litmus, and I started to perform few of the experiments. And the motto was actually we were using OpenShift cluster in our production workloads, and we were facing few issues with the router ports. So when the traffic load increases, the router ports getting failed, and the nodes actually we deployed the cluster in the AWS. So the nodes were showing some vague behavior, like under the LB, some of the nodes go into uncontrollable state, and we actually performed, we actually were need to increase the count, then decrease the counts of the node. So that was actually our affecting our production workload. So then when I came to chaos engineering, the Litmus intro that you provided, so I thought that the experiments which you described were able to help us to predict those kind of behaviors in advance, maybe in the non-prod, by performing those kind of experiments and all. So actually, I'm preparing a presentation to my team with Litmus and its chaos experiments. So that's why I used to ask few questions in the Slack channel itself. So I think, yeah, so I think most probably within next week, I can have the presentation within my team, and I can bring some of my team members to the community to get more about Litmus and adapting this as a tool for into our process.
Great. So there is some amount of node level. So we are basically classifying the experiments as application and infra level, or in other terms, pod level and node level experiments. So there are a few node level chaos experiments that are getting added shortly in the interim. Udit is adding that. We've got some experiments today, and that suite is just going to get increased. There's service level failures in the node kubelet, Docker crashes, and then you can do forced evictions of pods and things like that. So probably, yeah, that's something that we can look forward to.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I think the next item on the agenda is about improvements to the Chaos Hub. That's one of the major refactoring activities that was taken up in the previous sprint. If there's any questions or any thoughts that anyone on the community wants to share, we could probably address that, and then Shomo and Argo might just run through the revamp that they've done of the Chaos Hub. So, Christopher, do you have any comments, any suggestions? Generally, look forward to hearing from Christopher most of the times.
Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
My microphone was broken. Anyway, suggestions for what exactly?
Anything you wanted to share? Any feedback, any requirements that you would like to see in the upcoming releases?
So the biggest thing, so I looked through the 1.5 release notes, and a lot of the features are good. I don't know if I'll have the opportunity to necessarily test or use them anytime soon here. However, one thing that is still, so I'll give you some feedback on something that happened yesterday. I was talking with a team about wanting to add chaos to their cluster. And one of the things we install is that event router deployment that converts events to Prometheus, right? So we can get metrics on the way chaos performs. And they were extremely nervous about us having to add something like that, which affects the global cluster, because they didn't want to necessarily risk chaos affecting any more than the targeted services. So one thing that I think is again, I want to continue to emphasize is monitoring and ways to make that easier and more stable and less intrusive to clusters. The next thing is installation. So I know that my system is not exactly using all of Litmus's features right now, because when we started this project, a lot of the features that we needed were not available in Litmus. So I for example, have a custom cron job that deploys the chaos engine rather than using scheduled chaos right now. And we might want to use scheduled chaos at some point, but right now we just don't have the bandwidth to integrate that. And so let me see, where was I going with this? What was the reason? There was a reason why something that scheduled chaos didn't do that cron jobs did.
Yeah, I think it was the ability to repeat over a specific time range with some randomization built in.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, the other thing that a lot of teams have been very, very interested in, and I know Litmus supports this, and I verified that it supports this, is they wanted to make sure that there was a very well fleshed out emergency stop run book. So I know that Litmus has the ability to stop chaos, but do you have a very well fleshed out like documentation on here's the steps to do emergency stop, and if, by the way, what if changing the status to stop doesn't work? What if there's a bug in that? What is the manual way to kill it? That kind of stuff. So I was writing that internally at Argo as well. And if that were to be public documentation, that would be really useful. But really, the main point to emphasize is when you install chaos on a team's cluster or target a team service, the first thing they see is a glaring red sign that says this is a lot of risk. So anything you can do to make teams more comfortable with the idea that this is not risk that will cause them to lose their data or take down their entire service or that kind of thing, I think needs to be like a top tenet to like chaos, but with very well mitigated risk for teams that are nervous about integrating this. Because that is the number one thing I keep hearing back from teams is we don't want this because it's too risky. And the other thing that would be important is I think some best practices for services that haven't had chaos run against themselves before. For instance, I've had to go through and modify a bunch of our internal services deployments to have things like pod anti-affinity, so that it has the preferred do not deploy the same pod on the same node if you have more than one pod in your replica set. And also make sure you have liveness probes and readiness probes. And also, let me see, there was one other change that I had to make. The other one was make sure your service has a HTTP endpoint that we can ping for liveness of the service. In addition to that's a slightly separate thing than the Kubernetes liveness probe, because it means something we can target with black box monitor so that we can build those dashboards in that one issue that I logged that says, hey, here's how chaos is affecting the uptime of your service. So that would be another thing to document. Like I'm saying all of this because I'm having to do this internally at Argo to get teams to be comfortable with doing this. And if Litmus were to simply provide it, then I have less work to do to integrate Litmus around it. So like, you know, and keep in mind, I'm only doing one experiment and I'm only doing it on staging and development environments. We haven't been allowed to touch production yet because teams are too scared. So that's the main thing to emphasize is, you know, I think Litmus has added a lot of really essential features here that are important, but I think now is the time to really focus on just stabilizing the framework even more, making sure that things are well tested and validated, and making sure it's super well documented with a focus towards, you know, monitoring and risk mitigation, because that is like teams don't like the idea of running chaos on their services at first. I think executives like the idea of running chaos because it forces teams to do the work to make sure their services are resilient. But, you know, Litmus is as much about a political and project management reality as it is technical. And so I think definitely thinking about that for the future of the framework is really where my guidance would be.
Awesome, Christopher. I think points taken. Just a couple of notes there. I think the installation upgrade and installation flow, we've just tried to, you know, sort of add some entry-level documentation in 1.5, but probably that's not enough. We'll definitely go ahead and improve that. That's the case with the big red button as well. So there is one level of abort that is there that works especially for pod delete, where you can just go patch the engine to abort, but that's an FAQ. I think it deserves a separate section probably. And I think Andreas is adding in some abort capabilities for chaos experiments that start processes inside target containers as well. So that's something that we'll probably document with a greater detail going ahead. Probably I'll add that immediately as a 1.6 item. I think one thing that really stood out, something that really did not strike, and it's some amazing feedback, is about risk mitigation and best practices. I think you've not called that out anywhere, but as a chaos framework, I think there is that need for people to.
Yeah, it's going to be the #1 thing that that teams that implement this in other companies or organizations are going to face headwinds on. Because everyone thought when Netflix talked about the Chaos Monkey that it was so cool, but they were thinking about it at a distance. They weren't thinking about what would happen if we actually implemented this.
Yeah, there are a lot of experiments within Litmus today, especially the non-generic ones like the Kafka, OpenEBS, Cassandra, and the other charts, which are actually using what you mentioned. These are the external liveness probes, not the ones on the Kubernetes deployments themselves, but something like an external client is simulating pod that basically tries to act like a downstream application to the actual application under test. But that's something, again, as a pattern that needs to be documented. Right now, it's sort of stuffed away as an experiment detail. So we probably need to bring that out onto the documentation. Thank you, Christopher. We'll add these items. And on the stability aspect as well, we're working on it. I think in the release notes that we've added, probably you can cite that. There's a GitHub comment-based slash commands that we've added, /run e2e, similar to what Kubernetes and other open projects are doing. So we were doing a retrospective CI post-merge. We'll also probably have some e2e tests running on the PR itself to sort of left shift or, you know, if there are any issues, we'll find it earlier. And
right.
code, yeah.
The other thing is also just and I know you know this, but I want to emphasize it again, more maturity around versioning and releases. Things like, you know, whether the 1.4.1 release was a little bit strange, right? Because some things were using 1.4.0 and some things were using latest and some things were using 1.4.1. And that makes it very difficult for me to go back to my management and say, here's what version we're using and here's what bugs and issues were addressed in those. And we were close to one of our teams saying enough is enough, wait until the framework matures and we'll talk back in 6 months. We were very close to that within Argo.
Got it. I think the confusion sort of arose from the fact that the patch release had only some components being versioned newly, and the other versions were still on the the minor release numbers somewhere in patch, but there was a single manifest holding all of them together. Probably what we'll do is from the patch releases, there's a 1.5.1 planned as well this time. So this time when the release happens, we will ensure that the release happens for all components, irrespective of whether there are changes that have gone into them or no. We'll still roll out new versions so that the manifest is consistent, and there are dedicated manifests for each release. So that should probably, and there is this helper pods that I'm sure you also started using, and they've all been mapped to latest tags. We will start versioning them as well. So there will be a release against the test tools repo, which will give us versioned tags on the helper pods as well. So that's something that we'll definitely handle going ahead. Yeah, that's a really useful thing. And thanks for holding fort, Christopher. I think we'll try to get these things done. So we have 5 minutes more to run through a very quick, probably, a very quick run through of the new hub. Orko, would you like to share your screen?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Orko. I'm gonna show you the new hub that we are developing. So, yeah, if you can see my screen. So we have revamped the hub quite a bit, as you can see. And we have focused on making it more accessible throughout. So through and through, it's a different hub, like the one you have been used to. It's completely different from there. We have tried to make it more accessible, so you get the information right ahead, and you don't have to click on. We have improved basically the user workflow. We have also added some other steps apart from the chaos installations, and you can just copy the YAML files, edit this sample, and according to your own customizable need. We also have tutorial videos for whichever experiments we support. Currently, we have for generic, we have some. So we have also improved the search functionality to search across the experiments inside it. Like if I search network, so I get here, so I can say network latency. Yeah, I get this one, right? So we have improved the search in 2 folds. We have also made it so that yeah, we have also written this entire website in TypeScript. So so we can manage some for more maintainable code base. This is our repo for that. So entire
Definitely
thing has been written in TypeScript.
Definitely support the choice of TypeScript. It's an awesome language.
Yeah, and we have tried to maintain best practices as much as we could. So if you check our website on web.dev, we get 100% on best practices. So we make it as painless for a developer to contribute in our code base as much as they can. So we want more contributions. We're going to improve this chart hub more. As Uma said, we're going to also incorporate those features such as workflows in chart hub. So we're going to incorporate workflows, and we're going to improve certain features about it, make it more scalable. and maintainable for others to collaborate. Sorry for being a bit nervous. This is my first stand-up, this is my first community meeting.
You're doing great.
You're doing great, Argo.
Uh,
Argo. He goes by Arco, so there are a lot of Arco. We already have 3 in this console.
So yeah, if you have any feedbacks, you can throw at it. I went quickly through this as much as I can. So we also had made some changes in accessibility. So like it becomes very accessible for screen readers and for a lot of screen readers can read all the images and it can give better experience for certain disability, the people with certain disabilities too. We have taken those into account too, as much as we can. So not much to show more. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to take on some questions. If you have some improvements or thoughts about ChartHub, the new version, anything will be helpful.
Great. Thanks, Orko. Thanks, Shobha. Just a note sort of to end the call on. So I will share the SIG charter. We're trying to update the documentation in the wiki. So I'll just put it there, and also the milestone content for 1.5.1 and 1.6. So I've gathered some feedback from this call from the community members. So probably restructure the milestones based on that. So please feel free to take a look at that and comment, and also do subscribe to these 6. So we'll work out a schedule to talk about the items that's to be covered as part of this SIG. Yeah, Uma, would you just like to introduce the blogs?
Yeah, we can have Prithvi do that. He's the maintainer of blogs and his brainchild. So I would like to get him.
Sure.
Umar, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for this great community sync-up. I would just share my screen to introduce the blogs that we have started off. The blog program includes writing blogs on everything about chaos engineering and LitmusChaos as a tool set for cloud native chaos engineering. We just started off with the blog program last week, and you can just check out hashtag LitmusChaos tag on dev.to, where we have posted a couple of blogs. I'll be posting those blogs on the Slack channel as well. So we have started off with blogs on introduction to chaos engineering and chaos engineering for cloud native systems. And we are coming up with more blogs on various aspects and features of chaos engineering as well as LitmusChaos. And I would love to invite you all our community members to contribute to our blog series so that we can improve on various aspects, and we can also spread the word about chaos engineering, because at the end what we want is chaos engineering to develop and redefine resilient infrastructure. So I would post everything on the Slack channel as well for you all to look at it and try and contribute, hoping for more blogs from your side. Also, I would like to mention that on Saturday we are having another community meetup at 10 a.m. IST, or we can say it will be Friday for other people, which is 9:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for them. And at that community meetup, we'll be having demos on various features of our new release. So I would invite you all to join the community meetup for the demo and sharing various, like your views on various features and its aspects. Thank you.
Just to add one more point, you might be wondering why this blog platform now. LitmusChaos is almost 2 years old, or a little more than 2 years old, May 2018, right? So we're already in June. It's 25-month old. Why blogs on a new platform? We are doing this to move to a vendor neutral blog platform. So far we've been posting Litmus blogs also on our company platform, MyData blog. But as we move towards becoming a sandbox project in CNCF, and as we get more community, we want the blogs to be coming out more from community, Andreas, Sumit, and Christopher. It's more valuable for the community to share, and it should be shared on a vendor neutral platform. Dev.to is something that we thought has been growing, where developers are coming together. It claims hundreds of thousands of developers are on this platform. So hopefully we made a good choice by moving here. But if you think there's another better way to post this blog on some other platform, Medium is one. We thought, but I heard Dev.to is better than Medium for SREs and devs. So we chose this. Right? So that's the background of moving here. We try to convert the existing blogs to come here so that it serves as a single place. So any feedback, please share it here or later on. So that's the background on this blogs.
Thank you, Uma. I would request everyone to take a look at our blogs and feel free to contribute. It was a great community sync up with you all, and hoping you all join the meetup on Saturday and our 13th community sync up next month, the third Wednesday, of course. And thank you everyone for joining. That's it from our side.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.